Mix It With Mike plugin of the week comes from Kit Plugins. It's the BB-N105 V2. This is not a new release. It's been out for a bit. Sat in my plugin folder for a long time, and then when I finally took a look at it, I thought, oh, this is worth a review. Wish I had done so when it came out, but I didn't, so we get what we get. But I thought it was still taking a look at, so I wanted to kind of quickly go over it and just say maybe if you're not aware of it, it's something that's definitely worth looking at. So I'll start by doing a quick little audio example. I have a little punk track that I'm working on the mixingwithmike.com classes that are every Wednesday evening. You can check that out at mixingwithmike.com. Here's a quick preview of a quick thing that I put together. So it's basically just EQ with the raw drums here. So I'll bypass here on the mix bus. Let's have a listen. Instead of shifting gears, you'd rather leave than save face. Live life with opposites, you can't play the same game. I don't understand what's going on, but we can't get back in line. I wanna make you cry, so let's fly our lives away. Run, 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 and now we take it side for playing God with both. Drown our past and lose the future, and the place peace and below. Heaven says, all right. So you could hear how much it adds clarity and presence and punch to the sound. Really opens up a lot of the boxiness, particularly in the drums. And that's what Neves are great for. They'll add warmth, they'll add clarity. You got all the focus and punch, particularly with the high Q switches. Now, to get a little bit of an understanding of this is basically an emulation of the 31105 EQ, which was part of the Neve 8078 that was released in the mid-70s. And that's probably one of my favorite Neve consoles. Really amazing one. So I'm a big fan of this EQ, and also of the 1081 is still my favorite EQ. That was part of the 8038 and 8048 consoles. And it's basically the same, other than some gain range on the preamp and the color of the surface being different, the panel being different, the switches down at the bottom being different, but more or less the guts of it, all the frequencies are identical, high pass, low pass filters, 4-band EQ, the whole thing. It's just the gain range up here that's a bit different. And so if we kind of go through it just real quick, we can kind of take a general overview of it and maybe poke around with a couple of the sounds just to kind of give you a sense of what it's all about. We have an auto gain feature. The auto gain feature works with the preamp. So if you set yourself to a mic preamp, you'll see the fader resets to 0. And as I kind of switch through the different settings, I'm driving the input gain for more saturation. And then this is driving downward. I have a separate switch here for the saturation on or off, basically. And so we can, drive the signal there. If we hit the continuous switch, we could drive it and be a little bit more particular. Otherwise, it's driving in 5 dB segments. The little 0.0 button here just means that you'll see the value of the gain that you're making as you make an adjustment or put your cursor over the knob. That's helpful. The fader will just change the fader color cap. Pick your favorite color and go. The options menu allows you to set up oversampling and all of that, default size and all of those sorts of things. These will just link them, so once you set it up on one, all of the other ones will have the same settings. So it's just a nice feature. You don't have to go through them one by one to set your oversampling. Otherwise, the EQ is pretty straightforward. The preamp will, when set to mic, it will give you adjustments here, again with the auto gain. If you're in line preamp, there's no adjustments that are there. It's just saturation on or off. Then what we have here is a high frequency shelf up on the top. You just click on the frequency here, drag the knob to whatever gain value you want, plus minus 15 dB on all of them. You can turn it into a bell curve, this high shelf. It's a high mid and a low mid frequency band. Each one has a high Q switch that narrows the Q by half, right? So you'll get a more focused sound. And then it drives mid-range frequencies here from 1.5 up to 8.2K. That's high mids. And down here from 220 up to 1.2K. So you have all of that. Bell curve switch here for the low frequency shelving EQ. So you could turn it into a parametric or a fixed parametric there with the selected frequencies. And we have a high pass, low pass filter EQ and an out phase inversion here. And everything else here is the fader, just the output fader gain. Again, this auto gain only works with the gain knob if you're in mic preamp mode. Otherwise, it'll just operate variable as you would normally expect. And if you're into it, the analog hum can be turned on here. Gives you a little 60 cycle energy. And you got 3 level settings. And that in the options menu can also be linked to all of them. If it adds some authenticity, go for it. If not, turn it off. Okay, so let's kind of poke around here a little bit. You know, I think there are some things that you can do with this, like just the driving the saturation here, you know, for the bass. And otherwise, and then you kind of got all of the other stuff. I always loved the Neve EQ for the low end of the bass, you know, particularly on the 1073, that 220 setting where you do a little boost in there. Really adds like a nice warmth to the low end. And then you got the mid-range punch here, which you can really focus in, or you know, just kind of allow you to kind of dig in a little bit tight there. You know, with the kick drum, kind of you can really give it like if you want to really dig in, it's really great for that kind of metal, like very super high-endy, clicky sound. You know, you could really drive that very well in there. And then otherwise here, just using the bell curve down around the fundamental, you can even drive a little bit of extra sub energy. Right? If you just want to get that little extra thing. The Neves are really amazing at that, where you drive down below what would be the fundamental and you can kind of get those almost like a subharmonic that you can draw out of the sound, and it does it in a really amazing way that you know, it can get muddy if you overdo it, just like with anything, but it is actually is really cool. With the, you know, with the snare drum sound, similar kind of thing. You know, sort of like with the Pultec, you know, where you can kind of push into that 100 hertz, you know, with the bell curve. And normally, like a snare fundamental is probably closer to 180, you know, but getting that extra body out of it by just sort of ramping up that sub frequency on the fundamental of the snare drum is really great. You know, plus you got the snap, you know, that you can really key in, you know, for the top end just with the high frequency shelf. Right. So there's a lot, you know, that you can work with in there. Let me kind of focus on some of the other things, just like the guitars. These were kind of a bit tricky to work with because there's a lot of fuzziness on them. But this is where I really always love the high Q switch, where you can really push into aggressively into, and you can kind of, to create a real sharp tone with the guitar sound. If you just want to drive some extra character into them, that's like a great way. It just looks like a tone shaping tool. That high Q switch is really amazing. And then, just with the vocal, just kind of, bringing in some air on the top end of the vocal.
Had my first impressions that had fallen out of place. Instead of shifting gears, you'd rather leave than save face.
And there's a lot of saturation on the original recording here, so this is not coming, I'm not driving it from here.
Had my first impressions that had fallen out of place. Instead of shifting gears, you'd rather leave than save face. Live a life of opposites, you can't play the same game. I don't understand what's going on, but we can't get back in lane.
Right, and just driving, a little bit of a kind of a mid-range tone into it. I can bring in some body here, again, similar type of thing by scooping it from underneath the low end of the voice.
Had my first impressions that had fallen out of place. Instead of shifting gears, you'd rather leave than save face. Live a life of opposites, you can't play the same game.
Sorry about the distortion there. That is definitely part of the original recording. Not my recording. But anyway, it's but you can get sort of everything you need here with all of the mid-range flexibility, drawing more body out of it. I probably could have done a better job here with this. Let's see, now that I've changed the guitar sound, what this sounds like.
Had my first impressions that had fallen out of place. Instead of shifting gears, you'd rather...
Yeah, a little bit too, I think that's why I kind of pushed into the higher frequency here, just to kind of get a little bit more presence out of it.
Had my first impressions that had fallen out of place. Instead of shifting gears, you'd rather leave than save face. Live a life of opposites, you can't play the same game. I don't understand what's going on, but we can't get back in lane. I wanna make it cry.
And one of the things that's really great about this in most vintage gear is driving in, pushing into the gain. In other words, more additive EQ, and then just make up for everything else with the output, pulling the fader down. And part of that is just getting a little bit more grit out of the sound. You'll find that most of the things that I've done here, and this is very different from the way I work with digital EQs, is kind of driving into it. Like almost everything is a boost, with a few exceptions here with some of the, kicks and the snares to kind of draw some of the boxiness out. And that is kind of part of the sound, right? So, and it tends to give you a little bit of something different, working additively, and pulling the output gain down as opposed to working subtractively. But obviously, there's places for both. A really great EQ. I really love this, and I think Kit did a great job of emulating it. I know they did some modifications to the original console. Not exactly sure what modifications they did, if they did something to kind of clean up the sound, or, whether it's center section work, whether it's module by module work. But the net result of it is really good, and this is definitely worth checking out if you're looking for a Neve emulation, sort of in the 1081 realm. All right, there you have it from Kit Plugins, the BB-N105 V2 Mixing with Mike plugin of the week.